pausing for a second so it pops up on the live stream. Great. Okay, well, click in here. It's all working. Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining us on this Veterans Day, November 11th, for the AAPI GoCast. I'm your host, Scott, and joining me this week, we have a really special guest, the Black Sheep lawyer from uh, Legal Worlds. So say hi.
Hi everyone, I'm a black sheep lawyer. I practice in San Jose, California, and do cover most of the Southern Bay Area as well as parts of San Francisco and beyond. And so I'm very happy Veterans Day to everyone, and I'm glad to be joining this group today.
Exactly. That's why I'm wearing the shirt here. But that's it. It's on theme. And this week, unfortunately, Malcolm, Raph, and Eugene. Well, actually, no, Raph is here. Sorry. Malcolm, Bobby, and Eugene couldn't join us, but we do have Raph here. So, and
Yeah,
what a week it
barely.
is.
Yeah, and I'm glad I could make it this week because I have been watching the Kyle Rittenhouse trial, and boy, do I have some questions.
As have we all.
I think we all have some questions.
Yeah,
I've been
namely,
watching it, and I've been seeing things that I said, "Huh, I didn't see that one coming."
yeah, mainly I really want to know what the prosecutor is smoking and where he gets it.
Oh, what
What
the
is Wisconsin? So I'm imagining meth of some kind.
The
Yeah,
prosecutor, for the most part, is actually pretty much following basically by the book in a lot of ways. I mean, there were the cross was probably a little bit kind of fell on deaf ears, and unfortunately, I think it bored the courthouse, the people inside of the courtroom.
I
These things generally, unfortunately, generally tend to bore people. Trials are not really as exciting as people generally tend to think. You try sitting and being a jury, keeping your eyes open. Had many people basically tell me, "Yep, these are very, very boring processes, and if you want to make it interesting, you have to really constantly engage people." In the particular case of the Kyle Rittenhouse, my take actually is that Mr. Rittenhouse pulled a very, very favorable judge, and that's the best thing that you can basically have. Um,
Yeah, I'm not gonna say the judge is in his corner, but there have been definitely up until today there have been some favorable rulings. There was some interesting evidence admitted today, but I will. I think I think him taking the stand was probably the most interesting development in the entire trial.
yeah,
I
most.
actually audibly gasped when I heard that the defense calls Kyle Rittenhouse. I was just like, okay, what?
Yeah. I mean, after the debacle yesterday about I believe if I recall correctly, there was a debacle between the prosecutor and the judge basically said, "Don't push me" or something along those lines.
Don't get
When the
brazen with
prosecutor
me.
wanted to bring in prior bad acts, essentially pointing to Kyle Rittenhouse's character, which is not exactly. I mean, I don't want to misrepresent the prosecutor here, but I mean that generally that's what is done strategically,
Yeah,
and
so there have
Judge Schroeder kind of
been
shot that down.
there have been three major events where the prosecutor got in trouble. I've watched the entire trial and or at least so far, and I've kept in kept up with what's going on. So basically, in the first time, the prosecutor tried to get Kyle to defend his post arrest silence
Nope,
and
can't do that.
explain how that
Fifth
was.
Amendment.
Yeah, the
Yep.
judge. It was like the parents getting the kids out of the room before they fight. The judge ordered the jury out and was like, "You can't do that."
Yes.
And then I believe the second incident was the pretrial evidence that, or the pretrial ruling that Kyle's comments outside of a CVS weren't admissible, and the prosecutor tried to convince the judge that the judge had opened the door for this. The judge was not having any of it. Actually, shouted at the prosecutor and said, "Don't get brazen with me."
Don't get brazen with me. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's become a meme really fast. And then the third case actually happened, I believe, today, either today or yesterday, where the there was a videographer on scene, and he was called by the defense. And on cross examination, the prosecutor tried to get him to comment on why he retained a lawyer and gave them evidence through his attorney.
Yeah, I mean, frankly, I mean, an attorney, you go ahead and ask that sort of question. And it normally would probably work with any other type of judge, but I mean, if you can read the room sitting in that on that bench, you can probably tell he's not going to countenance.
Yeah,
It would probably
questioning.
work in a different sort of judge, and frankly, a different part of the country, different department. But frankly, Judge Schroeder, it seems to me, is following the evidence rules as much as he possibly can to a T.
Yeah, it's kind of odd. It's this weird combination of kind of a loose courtroom. I'm aware that in many courtrooms, judges require objections to be uh, given in a sidebar, for example. But apparently this is this really odd combination of a very strict courtroom and a very loose courtroom in terms of judicial procedure and evidence rules, irrespectively.
It's very very it's I mean, I can tell you basically in my experience basically in courtroom, it's again very much dependent on the judge and also the judge's relationships with the attorneys, to be quite frank. I mean, everything is a little bit different in a criminal procedure or a family law procedure, or heck, even a child custody hearing. It really does depend on the judge's mood, and whether or not they strictly want to adhere to, for example, in this particular case, Wisconsin's rules of evidence.
Yeah, and I mean,
Yeah.
especially in this case, I think that Fifth Amendment violation wouldn't fly in front of any judge worth his salt. I think that was actually, in the judge's own words, brazen. Uh, and I
It
think
also made me feel like there
I
was
don't
some
know if that
prior
would.
history there, just
Well,
given the level
this
of
particular
hostility,
prosecutor,
it's not.
yeah, this particular prosecutor has had 13 cases in front of that particular judge in the last 2 years.
Yeah.
So there may well be some bad blood there. But I would have to go look up transcripts and figure that out, which I'm not willing to do. That's a
Yeah.
paralegal's
That takes
job, and
that
I'm
Yeah,
takes
not a
an inordinate
paralegal.
amount of time.
for sure.
And I
I
mean, and that's the sort of thing that also, frankly, a large law firm would do. I mean, because frankly, it's billable time, and you can also, with a straight face say, yes, this is perfectly for a client's case. And oftentimes, you really need to do that sort of research to research that judge, because you may need to say, okay, we may need to move to disqualify basically for this judge. But I haven't done the research. But I wouldn't be surprised if the defense basically said, oh wow, Judge Schroeder, this is going to be great.
Yeah, quite possibly. I mean, I remember like yesterday at one point, I forgot. I think it was around the introduction of a photo of Kyle with it at a bar with the something like I'm fucking free on his T-shirt, and the jury wasn't in the room, but they were having a deliberation about that, and the judge called him out and said, "I don't believe you," when he was
Right.
trying to imply that, oh, I thought you opened the door back to this controversy, and I just making an argument in good faith, and to have a judge come out and say, "I don't believe you," in a Wisconsin accent was just kind of broke up the proceedings a little bit.
As far as I can tell, that's extremely rare for a judge to assume one of the lawyers is acting in bad faith.
Yeah, I've seen some firsts in this trial. I don't normally surprise, but I was thinking to myself, I don't think I can remember a time in a similar trial where, frankly, the defendant took the stand. I was thinking to myself, this is interesting. Okie dokie. But it's possible that the defense said, we have one so much in the bag, now we're just going to humanize him. Frankly, that was a heck of a gamble.
Well, it almost makes me wonder, like, if they would have done it if they hadn't have had what was the witness, like Gage
Gross
Gross
Kreutz.
Fruits or something the prior
Gross
day.
Kreutz, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, basically saying before, it wasn't until you pointed the gun at him and advanced on him with your gun with your hands up that he fired, right?
Right.
And then, he went correct. And then the meme is, the lawyer had his head at his hands at that point onwards. I almost wonder if after that big of a bombshell, if, they were feeling kind of lucky in deciding to putting him on the stand.
It's Who knows? It's possible. I just keep on thinking basically about the prosecutor who, I mean, again, as Raf had just mentioned, 13 trials basically before this judge in the last year. But again, one has to also remember, for the most part, the prosecutors get assigned cases for the most part. He probably looked at this and said, "Oh boy, this is going to be a media, a poop storm, and the facts are not all that wonderful about the only. I mean, for non-attorneys and people who are not very much on top of this thing, they will pay very much attention to the facts that Kyle Rittenhouse had basically traversed several state lines to go into, Iowa to actually and brought his gun, and they will focus on that a lot, which, frankly, yes, doesn't look very good. On the other hand, the facts leading up to the shootings themselves, however, look to me to be pretty clear-cut cases of self-defense.
I don't think that's really been in debate during the trial. There's been some technicalities brought up, and there was a lot of hoopla today over frame by frame analysis of videos where
Oh yeah,
I
the
believe
the
Kyle
zooming
muzzle
in.
swept Gage Grosskreuz's leg right after killing Huber when he was bringing his rifle back down. And there was well, video testimony has been a massive component of this trial, and there have been multiple video experts and people claim to be experts who are clearly not brought in.
They're not experts.
I actually had a couple of questions on tactics for you because I'm a bit of a legal nerd, but I obviously don't have a law degree. So what do you think, if you can speculate, what do you think the defense's reasoning was in bringing Kyle to the stand? Do you think it was made before the trial, or do you think it was made during the trial
I think it was probably made
because of the
sometime during the
prosecution's
trial.
incompetence?
No, I have a feeling it was probably made sometime during the trial. I think basically by yesterday, they probably had already put their finger to the wind and said, I mean, myself personally, I without looking at the file very, and knowing the file as intimately basically as they do, because I'm just a spectator basically like anyone else, right? And of course, I'm also paying attention to my own work. But looking at this, I'm thinking to myself, boy, there is the possibility, frankly, that this firm is just saying, you know what, let's really go for let's really do this is not going to be as much of a Hail Mary as maybe some people had thought. Let's go out with a bang and place him on the stand, because it's going to generate quite a bit of draw, whether or not a political draw, and a lot of cameras and a lot of print. Whether or not that was necessarily in Kyle's best interests, that's kind of up, to debate. But I'm thinking it probably did not. It did not jeopardize his case all that much. The worst that
That's
basically the prosecution can do here is essential, or excuse me, and remember they had moved for a mistrial with prejudice, so they really feel confident that they will get a favorable ruling.
Yeah, so I did watch Kyle's entire testimony, and I was amazed. He did not slip up once.
Yeah, I was pretty
He was on the
impressed.
stand under cross examination for 5 hours straight, and
Yeah.
he did not mess up. The prosecution was trying to play out the clock. They took all sorts of directions, but I was kind of interested in another tactical aspect, or if it was just defense incompetence. So there were several lines of questioning during cross examination that definitely went outside of the realm of normal cross examination, and they were essentially treating him as a hostile witness without objection, including, I think I counted one question being repeated with slight variations 7 or 8 times, and there was no objection for badgering until eventually the judge stepped in. Do you think that was a tactical decision to like maybe bore the jury, or make the
Or
make the
make them look
prosecution
bad.
look like badgering questioners, or do you think
He,
that was just a matter
so,
of
are you speculating perhaps that basically defense placed Kyle Rittenhouse and said, "All right, do your thing, don't crack," and then we are just going to let prosecutor essentially make himself look bad by essentially boring the jury to tears?
my theory is that they put him through some pretty heavy mock cross examination, and he was solid. And they were
Oh
like, you
yeah,
know what? Kid can handle himself. Let's just let the prosecution wear themselves out on this, and the jury won't be paying attention by the end. We know where
yeah,
they're going to
no,
go first,
Yeah.
and
oh
we're
yeah,
going to let them go after that.
no, certainly, because juries, frankly, a lot of juries can't even sit through an hour, let alone 4 or 5.
Yeah,
Well, I also
I'm
have to wonder though. It's like, I mean, he did crack though when he first took the stand. Like,
I mean
was that
crack
kind
in
of a
terms of
gamble on their part?
I mean crack in terms
Emotionally.
of legally. So he didn't
Yeah.
so for example, if they had gotten him to accidentally perjure himself by asking a series of rapid fire questions and he answered one wrong,
No,
that would have been cracking, for example. Or if
well,
they
that
had gotten
would have been
him,
cracking, and that would have been absolutely, and this is traditionally why, of course, and defense attorneys basically, do everything they possibly can to try and convince the client not to take the stand, right? Don't be a hero, as it were. But
on the other hand, it does really play well with juries.
Yeah.
it
Well, I mean, it's like you look at
plays
other high profile gun
well
Well, it
with
cases.
can play
It's
well with
uh,
juries if
it.
yeah.
yeah.
Well, I
It
mean, it's
play
like Chauvin, for example. He didn't take the stand, and the George Floyd tragedy. I mean, is that sort of because the defense knows he's guilty, whereas maybe they, I don't know, have a general sense that they feel like Kyle Rittenhouse isn't guilty based on the evidence, or I'm just kind of curious, like what decision goes
It's never a
through
good
to make that
idea
happen.
as a
Yeah, I mean, it
general
seems
rule.
like I've always heard it's like every famous trial. It's like OJ didn't take the stand. In almost any other trial, it's usually not the case. So yeah, kind of wondering.
Yeah, no, I mean there could be any number of factors that basically go into why some or someone is, but it had to have been pretty profound in this particular case, unless you want to go for the theory of defense incompetence. But frankly, actually, the defense has been. I mean, people have talked about the prosecutorial incompetence, but frankly, for the most part, I mean, the defense has been held up its own pretty well, and has also had the favor of drawing a solicitous judge, one that will listen basically to every theory and stick very, very strictly to canons of admissibility and evidence. So I really can't speculate as to why defense thought it might have been was a good idea to basically stick Kyle up there, but he held his own.
Yeah, so I was kind of curious. Have you ever worked on or been in close proximity to a self defense, a trial where active self defense was a factor?
Gun. Let's see. Let me take a look. No, no, not like this. Not like this.
Well,
I mean,
obviously.
yeah, yeah.
Or
No,
like a home invasion or anything like that.
Well, generally
no,
charges are dismissed or not even brought up if it's clear, and that
yeah,
I
but
think
if it has to
many
be
are
clear and
saying is what
convincing,
should
but
have been.
a lot of the cases that I've been involved with, unfortunately, have been they get brought up basically on Domestic Violence Prevention Act charges under the state of California statutes. So they are kind of quasi criminal, quasi family, and this brings up yet another issue, which we'll probably cover at some other time podcast. Basically, what happens to your guns when the magical word Domestic Violence Prevention Act TRO is served upon you.
Yeah, pretty
Um,
much the police destroy them and then you have to sue and lose. I've been following several cases that FBC has been pursuing in this, and
yeah,
essentially,
it's basically in short story, it's not good. The what yeah, you have to do everything you possibly can, and too long to get into here. It truly is. Um,
Well, I'm
so
kind of genuinely curious about, like, just in general family law situations, like, things don't work out in a relationship. What if, someone says, "Oh, well, my spouse has 5 guns." Does that ever sort of like factor into
it
custody
depends on the
decisions or anything like
judge.
that?
does that? I'm sorry. Could you repeat that, Scott?
Well, so say for example, you're going through just a normal, family law situation.
Yep.
Does that ever factor into custody decisions? Just kind of curious about that. Like,
Oh yes. Oh yes.
it's like no crime committed, no spousal abuse, just things didn't work out for whatever
Oh,
reason.
and this
But
is probably part of the reason too why I am a little bit incognito as it is, because I have to raise my eyebrows basically on certain cases, some of them not my own, where I would look at the facts and I would trade stories basically with colleagues, and I say, how interesting. That just seems a little bit biased, a bit, but the overall tone is that here in the valley, and particularly in densely populated areas, it's a pattern. The Silicon Valley, San Francisco, The only other place that I can think of which is densely populated that isn't quite so anti-gun actually at the point right now is probably Temecula.
Oh yeah.
Temecula is distinctly different than other densely populated metropolitan areas, but who knows? I mean, that may change as well. But I have a thing a lot. I mean, people's people's attitudes about firearms and home protection are very, very different once you get out of these particular counties. Santa Clara County, Alameda County. Once you get past the Alameda, beyond Yolo, Sacramento, um, you go down south and you go more inland into California, and it's like a completely different state. It's
So
almost like
once
a
you get out
completely
of the money, people have a little bit more common sense. I mean, that's a pretty common
once you get
experience.
out of the money, I hate to say this, the super knee jerk liberal, anything that even looks like a gun is necessarily evil attitude drops away precipitously. Precipitously.
Yeah, as
Um,
a Chicago and New York native, I've experienced this firsthand. Um, yeah, it's shocking. Just the attitude that you get when you don't when you're so insulated from, I'd say, a more raw version of reality. It's pretty incredible.
yeah. The problem is, and I've spoken to other attorneys who have 2A sensibilities about them too, is that unfortunately the Second Amendment community, or indeed even people who are not, I mean, who believe firearms can be safe, except of course in that time when you are using them you only point these things, at something or someone that you intend to destroy, and the idea basically being is this person is coming into your home and potentially harming you and your loved ones. Well, off, that's a situation in which you may, you would want to shoot someone, right? So, but the attitude is just totally different within the Silicon Valley, where you have a high number of people who come in for work, and a good chunk of them, frankly, have never even held a firearm. You see,
Yeah,
have no education about a firearm, have no wish to educate themselves about a firearm and firearm safety.
yeah.
It's
One thing,
changing though. Recently,
Mm-hmm.
with people within the Asian community are now very interested. More and more, I hear more and more about them getting interested because they're frankly they're afraid for their own lives.
Well, yeah, I mean, case in point, I mean, that's a big reason why we exist. And, thank you for filling the AA quota for this week, considering I'm the only one on camera and obviously not Asian. Um, and the rest of our Asian co hosts, unfortunately, have, as Raph likes to say, they have more stuff going on than us old married folks. They've got lives, we don't. So things come up and they couldn't make it this week. But, I hear you. I mean, it's interesting because it's like, I mean, Bobby, for example, like he is opening up an FFL and gun store in the Bay Area as a
Excellent.
Chinese American, which is pretty awesome.
isn't he doing
So
that while still on his green card? If
yeah,
I'm
he's still on his
remembering,
green card, as far
I
as I know.
honestly didn't know you could do that, and
I didn't either. It's awesome
when I
though.
heard that, I was just like, okay, that's awesome. Let's go, America.
Yeah, it's pretty. I should, I am not a specialized immigration attorney, so I can't really advise on that. But I thought to myself, yeah, I mean, it's actually surprising the number of freedoms, and it's good too. The number of freedoms that people who only have green cards actually can, have access to, basically, in here in America. It's a neat little feature of ours.
Yeah, it's like if you live here and you're legal to live here, you know what? You're probably cool.
Yeah,
So long, so long as you pay your taxes, everyone,
exactly. Yep.
then you're
Don't
good
don't
to.
fuck over the IRS, then you're okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, there are two things here. So there was a Batman comic way back when where it was Joker. Even Joker is scared of the IRS. And
Yep.
then I think more recently, somebody was pointing out that Elon Musk, he's willing to say horrible things to and about the SEC all day long. But when it comes to paying his taxes, he does not mess around.
Yeah, Elon Musk he sure does love drumming up controversy, but there's a point where you just think to yourself, how much drama do I really want to to draw to myself? So
Well, speaking of drama, that's probably a good segue into SCOTUS, actually. Basically,
Yes.
they heard New York State Rifle and Pistol Association for
Bruin.
Sorry.
Scott, your audio's off.
Yeah, I could barely hear that, Scott. I'm sorry.
Yeah. So NYSRPA, New York State Rifle Pistol Association, which is actually an NRA subsidiary or NRA beneficiary, I believe they're associated. They brought a case before the Second Circuit Court of Appeals, which is our circuit. They are horrible. They were obviously denied, and they brought it up to the Supreme Court. And
Yep.
the wording of the lawsuit was actually changed by the court. But essentially, it deals with the Sullivan Act, which is the law that requires that all concealable weapons be permitted to own and permitted to carry separately in the state of New York. And this specifically was two gentlemen who got concealed carry licenses, but in New York State, we have restrictions on those. So it's very rare to get an unrestricted concealed carry license in New York State. Generally, they're given with a restriction for carrying to work or carrying to the range. So there's an obvious issue there in terms of this is theoretically considered a right that's being restricted in this particular way. So that made its way to the court. The court changed the wording so that the fact that they were issued for a different purpose than they wanted was an issue, instead of them not being issued was an issue. So it's a slightly complicated wording change that I don't fully understand the implications of, but it was argued. And based on the court's questions, it seems like a lot of gun control groups are in a little bit of a tizzy. So you obviously know more about this sphere than us. So,
although I do have to say my favorite quote was, how many muggings take place in a forest?
Yeah, but also I think the other highlight was the arguing attorney for our side said, I don't know if you've ever been to NYU, but they don't really have much of a campus, and Clarence Thomas cracking up for about 30 seconds straight.
Clarence Coppin, yeah. I mean, he's always entertaining to watch whenever he does actually speak.
I mean, he
that's
actually
the thing
started
that's
out with asking questions, which is extremely rare for him. I think he has actually some investment in this case, which is fascinating for me.
Well, that was the thing, because I had always heard, for years from the media that Clarence Thomas just doesn't talk, or at least he doesn't issue opinions. So it was kind of interesting to be able to hear him live.
Yeah, Clarence Thomas. I mean, he is famously stoic when it comes to his opinions about many issues. And in fact, actually, when was the last time he actually wrote an opinion? It was that he authored an opinion. He just tends to just to sign off on someone else's opinion, so one of the other justices' opinions. No, I see. So Raphael, you're over there in the Second Circuit.
I'm in New York State, so I'm extremely excited about this case.
Oh, so I see. So you're in New York State. Okay, so you're right in the middle of it.
Yes,
I see.
This directly affects me, and I have my Clarence Thomas hat on and my little number one finger. I'm rooting.
Well, my favorite jurist was Antonin Scalia, but it had more to do with the fact that how he interpreted the Constitution and his manner of interpreting the Constitution, rather than his any of his. I just happened philosophically, I happened to yen very much with the man, and it was a very sad day when he died.
I think Scalia's judicial philosophy would best be summed up as no step, and I'm very happy that Amy Coney Barrett, who is arguably one of his proteges, is now on the court.
Yeah, Meredith. Yeah. I would probably say so too.
Ted Cruz too, right?
Ted Cruz clerked for him, I believe, as well as Amy Coney Barrett, and then also argued, I believe, the 2000 election case in front of him, which obviously he won.
Yes. That's my understanding.
I don't believe that he and Amy Coney Barrett clerked at the same point in time, though. Ted Cruz is, I think, about 10 years older than her.
Gotcha.
Yeah, but I don't know. Did you actually listen to the arguments in that case? And if so, or even if not, what are your insights on that? What did you think the strength of the relative arguments were, and
I
How do you
didn't
think
listen to
it
the
went?
arguments of it. Actually, to tell
Okay.
you the truth, I was actually focusing on at the time I was actually focusing on some believe it or not, on some compliance, money laundering compliance issues, basically for a client, in and around that time, and it just took up all of my time.
Priorities.
Yeah.
You know what? Your current law practice super or is I guess more important than whatever the Supreme Court happens to be doing at any
Yeah,
given
it's
time.
unfortunate. Yeah, I it's sometimes our regular jobs do take priority, unfortunately. But that's the problem. When people, I mean, and that almost sounds like an excuse, because little by little, when people have their regular jobs take over slowly, and this is more kind of a philosophical statement, little freedoms at the edges begin to kind of get stripped away. That's the problem.
I
People are
feel
just too
that.
busy. You
Yeah,
see.
moving from a contractor to just normal full time 60-hour week software engineer was a struggle for me because I was like, well, I want to care about all these things, but I can't.
Most people can't in the Silicon Valley. Most people, for example, there are board hearings, and there are, calls for people, for the public to make a statement. Most people won't. They won't,
Yeah.
because they'd rather
Yeah.
just stay home and watch Netflix.
Or it's like a weird hour, like, 12 p.m. on a Wednesday, and it's like, well, okay, I'm in the middle of work for my day job. Sorry, I can't make it. But old people can. It's just the difference is that most of the old people are extremely liberal in the valley.
Yeah. Well, uh,
Depends.
people are very liberal in some areas, but when it hurts them, they become very, very conservative.
Yeah, like new housing developments, then no one wants to
Oh
jump
That's
yeah.
in.
called NIMBYism, not in my backyard.
Exactly.
Oh yeah, NIMBYism. I had to deal with that a lot at an old firm that I used to work for. We dealt with a lot of takings clauses, as well as easement issues, and counties essentially wanting to, proposing to basically build for example, homeless shelter here and there. And as soon as you use that magic word, people, they come up in arms. You know,
Yeah.
Yeah,
they're all for housing for the homeless until it's oops, it's a little
it's
too close
literally
to
in your
line.
backyard. Yeah, I
Exactly.
mean, like, there's this whole proposal to convert like rat hotels that are just like completely dilapidated into affordable housing for the homeless. That I mean, it cropped up in LA when I was there, and then like I think there's one proposed in San Jose and one in Milpitas, and
Yep.
people are just always up in arms over that. It's like, well, nobody's using the space. There's homeless already living there. Week to week, and it's like you're against them getting a renovated nice place to live in.
I think the argument there is like it makes sense for the people who live there because bringing people who are stereotyped,
Oh yeah,
perhaps
but
sometimes accurately as
in
drug
this
users
case
into the
it's like
area
they're already
is
there.
scary. Now, maybe
Yeah,
if California relaxed some gun laws at the same time as they did that, maybe
maybe.
that wouldn't
Yeah,
be such a big
exactly.
deal because you'd have the means for self-defense. But no, California won't do that because California does not have their head on straight. Um, so
California
really,
doesn't have their head on straight. New York doesn't have its head on straight. Florida has got its head. Well, in some areas, I mean, well,
I work in
Florida.
Florida at this point, and I can tell you it doesn't have its head on straight, but it's pretty much a 180 from California to
Yeah.
New York. They suffer in exactly the opposite areas, and it's hilarious.
Yeah, and increasingly, Washington and Oregon now are swirling around as well.
Yeah,
Um,
unfortunately, Amazon has
Native
really messed
Oregonian
up.
here, unfortunately.
yeah.
Amazon has really messed up those areas in terms of bringing a lot of money into the larger cities and increasing their voting power over the rural areas, which have common sense but not necessarily high-minded sense.
Well, it's
I'm
the
not
same
quite
thing
sure.
with New York State. You go inside of New York City, it's as blue as the sky. But as soon as you move out into the more kind of rural areas, people are rather conservative.
Oh,
Mhm.
I know. I live in a rural area, or not. I live in a city in a rural area, and the people around here, you can drive 20 minutes from me and find some serious rednecks. You'd think you were in West Virginia. Um, I'm quite serious. Upstate and Western New York are both absolute hoots. But unfortunately, downstate has control, and they ruin it for the rest of us. New York State's a beautiful place. I say that through gritted teeth because I hate the politics.
Yeah, yeah. No, I understand.
Yeah. Well, it's kind of like the difference between like San Bernardino and Los Angeles too, in a sense.
Yeah, you could say that. Los Angeles. Oh God, the court system basically in Los Angeles is unfortunately a nightmare. It's well, they're all nightmares, but in LA particularly because of I mean, it's broken up into four different essentially um, four different locations basically because the city is so dense that it basically that you have to have hearings in four different locations across the city, dedicated to different aspects, basically, particularly of family law, criminal, family, um, and it's just a mess. It's a mess. I have some friends
Yeah.
down there.
I
Yeah, New York
remember being
State.
called for jury duty in LA County and had to go basically just sit in, the county courthouse uh, for the better part of a day. I didn't get picked, they just told everyone they decided to settle, so everyone got to go home. But that was 6 hours of my life I couldn't get back just sitting there waiting for them to decide that.
I
And
mean,
we were like instructed, don't leave the courthouse to go to lunch because you're gonna get like
You may be
mugged by
told.
homeless people, or it's like you may see a restaurant that's walking distance, but you're gonna have to go through like a tent city, so like just like stay here.
yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
walking through the city may bias you unnecessarily. Not necessarily part of the case, but it
Yep.
could be the case anyway. I mean, if you want to get out of jury duty, just tell them you know what jury nullification is. If you do,
Or you could say something rather off color, and that would probably help you as well. But that is not exactly kosher.
Yeah, or
yeah,
just like walk around with a sign like Bruce Willis from Die Hard 3, and that'll get you out of it real quick.
I mean, I know it makes attorneys' lives hell, but I do know what jury nullification is, and I'm kind of a fan under specific circumstances. So I've just kept that as a card in my belt for when I inevitably get called in for jury duty.
I mean, who knows? Maybe you could just say I own firearms, and that's enough in some places.
It would honestly depend on the case. I assume for like
It would depend on the case. It
a
would
B
depend
and
on
E
the case,
case,
and
if I own a gun, I don't think that's going to disqualify me from the jury if somebody unarmed stole stuff from a Walmart.
Very true.
very true.
So shifting back to the Supreme Court, gently prodding, I guess. Um, so if this ruling comes out favorably, which would the essentially the favorable ruling in theory for New York's or for our people, those who believe in individual freedoms, is that New York State is required to issue licenses to anybody who asks for one and is legally qualified for one. So turning New York State essentially from a may issue state to a shall issue state. That's the most likely a good scenario. There's other ones that include the entire Sullivan Act being repealed because it was based on racism, as Justice Kavanaugh pointed out. But I don't think that could legally be used as cause, but I'm sure it could be included in the opinion. But if that happens, how does that affect, say, California? Would
Yeah, I
that
mean,
be
I
used
guess
as precedent in, for example, a what is it? Is that Sixth Circuit, Fifth Circuit? I can't remember.
I think we're the well, no, we're not the ninth, are we? I think we are
Ninth,
the Sixth Circuit, right?
You are
Or
ninth.
are we the ninth?
ninth.
We
I can't
are.
remember.
Okay.
I remember that you have Saint Benitez. I don't remember which circuit he's on. But
Well,
so how would that play out for California? Would it be like California would quickly try to repeal their shall issue laws? Would it be somebody would sue and then Supreme Court precedent is passed down by default?
I guess it
it's
like
quite
depends if it's a
possible
narrow
because
ruling, right?
as you are well aware, the coasts basically tend to rely on each other in with regards to opinions, right?
Mm-hmm.
Since I'm probably dodging a little bit here, but since I don't regularly practice basically in the federal court system, I'm kind of reticent to basically say anything. But I can definitely say this based on what I can tell. Someone is going to write an amicus brief, doing everything that they possibly can to basically stop the because as you know there is no direct precedent basically from between the circuits unless unless basically the Supreme Court essentially just hands down and makes it law of the land, which will never happen. And it will probably influence gun laws basically over here in California, but it's at this point it's too early to speculate. I do
Okay.
think that.
But if a positive ruling was handed down that or if this case was decided favorably for the plaintiffs,
Yes.
that would most likely have an effect on California. But
it would certainly have a political effect, and lawyers and 2A lawyers, once it's actually written down, will be going over with the fine tooth comb, as well as anti-gun lobbying groups as well.
For sure.
Yeah, well, I've definitely noticed the panic. For example, Everytown sent out a missive essentially to their agents of chaos, or whatever you'd prefer to call them, throughout the country, essentially saying, okay, given this ruling and given the current composition of the court, we should refocus hard on community violence prevention programs and other things like that, instead of assault weapons bans and tougher concealed carry laws. And I think that speaks well to their lack of confidence about how the case will turn out in their favor.
Right.
But I actually don't quite understand the mechanism by which that would affect other courts or other jurisdictions besides New York State, just because it's not an actual law change. It would just be precedent. And so either other cases would have to be brought in front of other courts that would follow Supreme Court
basically for precedent for that particular jurisdiction, but rather not precedential for other binding jurisdictions, right? So frequently, even at a much lower level, superior courts will look to other appellate courts basically throughout the state basically for their opinions, which then at the appellate level basically it becomes binding until basically someone overturns it at a higher level. But the thing though is, you can frequently look to other jurisdictions basically for how to best interpret, and it's well known that California and New York courts frequently look to each other.
Okay, so essentially would have to probably make it to an appeals court before it would filter down to the local level. If I'm
more or less, there's going to be some time before there's actually going to be that much effect, I would say.
Okay. Well, I mean, the different thing in California, though, is like, unlike New York, that's like a blanket. Every single county has a may issue permitting system, right? Whereas us, it's like it's broken up by county. So it's like, for example, it's like, I mean, if you're in Lassen County, you can get it really easily, or one of the areas that Jonathan mentioned.
California is a may issue state, but in practice, separate counties practice it. Or practice that in different ways. So many counties in California practice as shall issue, because they just they take your legal eligibility for a concealed carry license as that. They say that's enough, and that's the same in New York State. The county I live in is may issue effectively, but if I drive 10 miles west, it is a may issue county for all intents and purposes, just not legally. It's the same system essentially, but we also have New York City where county permits do not apply and stuff like that happens.
Excuse me, hang on, gentlemen. I've got I have an emergency actually from a client. I think I may have to take this. I really apologize about this.
Well, we're about to wrap up anyway, so I think
we do have the news, so we can at least use that in the meantime while you.
I do apologize. I do have to take this. Raphael and Scott, let's try and actually do this again. I apologize at this very inelegant exit, but client's actually calling from the jail, so I better probably should pick him up.
Absolutely should understand. Do that. Best of luck.
Okay.
Breaking news. Okay. All right. Bye.
Bye.
Thanks, Jonathan.
You're welcome. Bye-bye.
All right. We've lost our lawyer.
Looking forward to Defense Lawyer Part 2, Electric Boogaloo.
Exactly.
Is going to get us banned from YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter. Great.
It will?
Maybe. That's a sensitive word because of particular people.
And I'm wearing a Hawaiian shirt. God damn it. Why did you... I'm on a list now.
Hawaiian. That's American.
Yeah, it's true. Well, Hawaiian style.
There actually isn't too much news this week outside of, well, SCOTUS recently and Rittenhouse, which I am going to grill Jonathan more on
Yeah,
since
once
that
the
was
verdict comes out, for sure.
yeah, that is a fantastic trial, just in terms of people like me who aren't lawyers. I don't have my JD. I'm just a nerd, and
I mean, I don't
learning
either.
about it.
I
Yeah,
just look at
learning.
contracts a lot, for work, but
Yeah, contract law is kind of the subset of law that a lot of people seem to have a lot more insight into, just because of legal or because of work purposes. I mean, I've personally written a response in a lawsuit. Um, I had a lawyer in that case, but I didn't want to pay for all the time, so I wrote my own defense essentially, and had him look it over and tell me it was all good.
oh, nice.
I've done plenty
Yeah,
of studying,
yeah. I've
but
I've, I've had to participate in like discovery for work, where it's like, okay, so it asks you for every single email you have related to this topic.
yeah,
That's always fun.
stuff like that. But I don't really have much experience in the criminal defense system, in the criminal defense aspect of law, and this is really interesting to get into.
Yeah, for
Um,
sure.
yeah, no, but this particular trial is fascinating, especially because of how unprecedented some of the stuff is. Particularly uh, the prosecutor being so out of line that the judge legitimately shouts at him and tells him that he doesn't believe that he's acting in good faith. And I'm not sure how to emphasize how rare that is, or how completely unusual that is. So a lawyer is an agent of the court. And for a judge to the judge implicitly assumes that that lawyer is acting in good faith,
Hmm.
complying with the law. And for that to not be the case is beyond the pale, in terms of both bad for that prosecutor and very, very likely to give the case some kind of either either mistrial. It's either mistrial bait, and the prosecution is basically betting on it being a mistrial without prejudice, or this is a lawyer who is stunningly incompetent.
Yeah. Well, and for the
I
benefit of
believe
the
constitutional
audience,
law is a year one of law school. I believe constitutional law, especially in terms of, for example, what you're allowed to ask a defendant about. I think that's a year
it's got to
one
be
law
up there.
school class. Constitutional law. I could be wrong, but that's relatively basic, and I think anybody who read the Constitution could understand why why that question is so problematic. Specifically, why did you stay silent after your arrest?
I know, it's like, doesn't get much more basic than that.
Were you trying to
Fifth
hide something?
Amendment.
Yeah, that's literally what the Fifth Amendment is for. I think the framers of the Constitution are spinning in their graves at this point.
I mean, if it's not this, it's definitely a lot of other things going on, for sure.
Oh right. I did get my first plate carrier this week because New York State tried to ban body armor and failed. So I finally
Ah,
bought one. I'm proud of myself. Quite happy with
nice.
it. Yeah. I had to get some
Yeah, very
mag
cool.
pouches and other stuff, but yeah, nice to
Yeah,
feel like, oh, if
I
somebody hits me in this 10 by 12 space, I won't get hurt that badly.
oddly enough, I have plates, but I don't have a plate carrier.
Oh, well, I have a
So
plate
I
carrier,
need to
but
get one.
currently zero plates.
Well, there you go.
Yeah, I got the AR
Complimentary.
500. I got the AR 500 Veritas modular in black.
Oh, cool.
It's a very comfortable plate carrier, and I have no complaints. It's
Nice.
quite nice. Well, except for the fact that the straps are too small because I'm a skinny guy.
Something tells me I wouldn't have that problem, but it might be the opposite.
It has plenty of room in either direction. I think you'd be fine.
There you go. There we go.
And it's very modular, so you can add or remove features as you wish. If you want magazine pouches, easy to do. You want a cummerbund with side plates, also easy to do. Holster added on, no problem.
Very cool.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so now I just need to buy some nice ceramic plates. because I'm pretty sure I will be lynched on Twitter if I buy anything except ceramic. Don't buy steel plates, by the way. If you have steel
Don't buy
plates,
steel.
I hope you don't have steel plates.
I don't think so. They're like Safe Life, whatever they make.
Yep, that's probably ceramic.
Okay.
But if you do have steel plates, don't say anything.
Yeah, I won't.
The spalling alone, people will not be happy with you.
I mean, I got enough shit for like my first gun being an XD9, and I was shamed into selling it at that point.
There's nothing
Uh,
wrong with the XD.
I know. I'm just kidding. I didn't
Springfield,
like it.
Springfield, the company has problems.
Yeah, I
They've
mean that's
it's
what it is. I think it's because they reneged on some sort of agreement, and where I don't know exactly the background with it, but I just
they
like some
lobbied
shady stuff.
for they lobbied for some gun control laws that would specifically hurt their competitors, and that was not good of them. On the plus
Yeah.
side, they are reintroducing the Browning high power, which
Oh,
I think
nice.
most people are a fan of that. I mean, it was the original 15 round 9 mil, and it's basically a Glock 19, but hammer fired,
Yeah,
and I think a lot of people are big fans of that.
that's sort of like a P99 then.
Yeah, but no, not as ergonomic, probably a little bit more durable, and not German, notably.
Not German, exactly. Yep, and well, yeah, and the XD9 is Croatian actually. So,
Oh wait, Springfield
or
XD9?
hmm
No, that's American.
well, it's made in Croatia though.
Oh yeah, but it's designed here.
Yeah.
Springfield is an American company.
Yep.
It may be manufactured there. I wouldn't know.
Yep. I mean, I didn't really have many problems with it. It's just like once I tried a Glock, I preferred the Glock, so I just like sold it because it's like, well, all right, I like this better. I'm never going to use it again. So,
Congratulations,
and
you bought a Toyota Corolla.
exactly.
Yeah.
Bought the Toyota Corolla, and yeah, now I have two Walthers, so it's
Have
kind of like,
Have you tried a CZ before?
yeah, my friend has a 75B, and I like
Yeah.
it. It's just like it's somewhat similar to my Beretta 92 FS.
Yeah. I'd recommend trying a few more CZs. The first one I ever tried, I picked it up and I said, okay, wow. And then I fired it and I was just like, okay, yep, this is it. This is what a handgun is supposed to be. I believe it was just a 75. No special no letters at the end, but it was lovely. I think probably my
Yeah,
dream CCW pistol is a CZ 2075 Rammy. I don't know if you're familiar.
yeah. I think wasn't that like what Adelina May like has or something?
No,
She's got like a pink one, or was that a different one? I
no.
forgot what
So
she
go ahead
was
and Google
carrying.
that. It's probably one of the most interesting pistols in recent memory. Not necessarily interesting, but why had nobody thought of this before?
Oh, nice.
I'm
Yeah,
gonna
probably
pull it
not
up.
on roster. I'm imagining.
Probably not. You'd have to go through a corrupt cop, but that's okay.
Yeah, basically.
It
I'm sure
is
it's on Gunbroker.
it
Well,
is
the
discontinued,
Calguns.
but essentially it's a subcompact, semi-automatic, double
Oh,
action,
nice.
single action, hammer-fired 9 millimeter pistol.
Very cool.
So it's approximately the same size as the P365, a little bit heavier because it's metal framed. Double stack mag, 10 round flush mount. But it's basically a tiny little double action, single action pistol. It's brilliant, sturdy, made by CZ, and really really good looking. I think probably the
Yeah, I'm
best
looking at it
looking
right now.
subcompact pistol in existence. Because let's be honest, the micro nines these days don't look that good.
No, they don't. I mean, it's like I've got a Glock 26, and it's just like it's just like a
26
tiny
is
Glock.
ugly.
It's very
The
ugly. Yeah,
the 26 was the first Glock I ever fired, and I looked at it. I was just like, wow, that's an ugly gun right there. They
yeah,
just took a hacksaw to a 19. It's pretty simple.
pretty much. Yep. Yeah. Whereas, like, I mean, I really do like the P365 though. It's another situation where basically you have to pay
It
triple MSRP to get one from a corrupt cop on CalGuns.net in California, but they are nice. I tried it out in Reno when I was there last time, and I was like, man, this sucks.
It's very snappy. Um,
Yeah,
it's got a very short grip for the caliber, and it does, and it's very light, so it does have quite a bit of recoil. But I think it manages it well. And the number of people who, if you're used to carrying a Glock 19, I think the ability to say wear a t-shirt and shorts and just carry this gun and it disappears.
yeah,
I think
just
that's
get a
massive for a
pocket
lot of
holster or
people.
something.
And it's got 10 rounds minimum. It disappears, and it's got at least decent sights if you don't have the SAS.
Yeah, yeah. The SAS is the one where it's like ultra concealable, and there's no sights except for like a little. I mean, it has like sort of a night sight thing on there. Like I tried it out. That it looked pretty cool.
Yeah, I think
But it's
they
like,
I think they ship with Ameriglows or Sig Sauer's equivalent. They generally have decent sights from factory. The SAS is a
yeah,
special version that has like a bullseye sight system, which is a bullseye bullshit. I don't know. It's not very good.
yeah,
But
nice.
it's definitely a thing. Yeah, but CZ is, I don't know. It's perhaps it's from my Slavic ancestry, but I've adored CZ for quite a while now.
I just wish we could buy more of them here because it's pretty much like almost any striker fire pistol that didn't come out before like the year 2000 is like off the roster. So that's why like the Glock Gen 3 is okay because it was like the only one around at the time. But most other striker fires are kind of off the market just because of the handgun roster restrictions. So it kind of
Yeah,
sucks.
absolutely. Oh yeah, this showed up in my inbox. So the LAPD on Twitter uh said, if you're being robbed, do not resist the robbery suspects, cooperate and comply with their demands.
What?
The LAPD said on Twitter, uh if you're being robbed, basically they tweeted an entire document that was victim blaming. So it was, uh do not resist the robbery suspects, cooperate and comply with their demands, and be a good witness.
Yeah, good call, especially if you're, yeah, that seems that's terrible. You have to send that so I can read it in the show notes because that's
Sure,
bullshit.
absolutely. I'll send that over
Uh,
right now.
nice, great. Well, I mean, on that note, I think that's all we had for news actually. So
We're definitely
let's
going to have to do a part two on this one.
we will do a part two
Unfortunately,
for sure.
our legal person had to drop, and boy, do I have more questions because this trial has
Yeah,
been both it's been a shit show, a circus, and absolutely nuts. And I've had a great time the whole time through. Looks like we're probably going to have the jury uh, in deliberations by tomorrow.
yeah, I heard Monday. That would be kind of interesting if they I doubt they'll like make a decision tomorrow, but that'd be cool. Friday Friday gift there because I actually have tomorrow off because it's like we ran at Veterans Day off, and I'm like, well, okay, fine. I'm just gonna make it a 4 day weekend. So I'm gonna be listening all day.
Beautiful. Yeah, I'm not sure what's going to be going on for me, but I've been keeping an eye on it throughout the workday when I don't have meetings. So
Yeah,
I've just been
me too.
pausing the live stream if I do and taking a listen, which has been really interesting.
Yeah,
But yeah, I'm gonna write out more about my questions and interests from the trial and see what we can get, because I think that it speaks well to the position of guns in Middle America.
yeah,
And I think, we're both coastal people. We're all coastal people here, and we don't really necessarily have a feel for what the majority of America um, feels and or understands about guns,
yeah,
specifically as they relate to self-defense. And I think that this trial is kind of a, not necessarily a cultural touchstone, but it's a touchstone
for
in
sure.
terms of how that works for Middle America. And I think that's going to be really good to get into. And there will be plenty of material to break down after the fact as well.
Absolutely. Yeah, I mean this plus the SCOTUS trial. As soon as they render a verdict on that, it's could be two big wins for the gun community. Well, speaking
Very
of
much hope
winning,
so.
yes. Well, speaking of winning, I hope you have a winning Veterans Day. We're going to sign off for now, and thanks for listening. We'll see you next time.
Excellent.